Hey, and welcome back to another video. And in today's video, what we're going to look at is how we can get started with building SwiftUI apps using Xcode. So we're going to go through where we can download it, how to download it, and also discuss the key concepts that you need to know in Xcode in order to build SwiftUI apps. So let's get started. So unless you're running a custom build, you'll need to make sure that you have an Apple machine running macOS. So before building apps with SwiftUI, the first thing you'll need to do is make sure that you have Xcode installed onto your machine. We can do this by actually downloading this via the Mac App Store. So on your Mac machine, if you just go to Launchpad, you should see App Store here, or alternatively, you can search for App Store. So once you're in the App Store, the next thing that you'll want to do is actually download Xcode. So you can access Xcode by either A, going to the develop category here, and you should see Xcode here, or alternatively, you can actually search for it here. So I'm just going to search for it. Okay, cool. So now that we've done that, you should now see the Xcode app here. So it looks like this, and then you want to click on it. Now I've already downloaded this, so there's no need for me to download it. But what you can do is if you tap download, it should download it, and you should get a button here saying open. Okay, sweet. So once that's finished downloading and you've now opened it, what you then want to do is actually find Xcode on your machine. So if you just go to the Launchpad, you can actually search here for Xcode, and you should see it here. So once you actually click and open Xcode, you should get presented with this. Now, what you can do is create a new project by either A, selecting create a new Xcode project from here, or alternatively, you can go into your toolbar and then choose File, New, and then Project. So let's do that now. So this will now start the process for you to create a brand new project. So when you're creating a new iOS app, you have all these different templates that you could use for each different purpose. Now, what we want to do is we just want to build an iOS application. So what I'm going to do is just select the first option, make sure this is selected where it says app, and then hit next. And then what you'll see now is you'll get all the information. So the product name is the actual name of your app that you're going to be building. So just because this is for dummy purposes, I'm just going to call this test project. So team is if you're part of a team. Now, if you're not part of a team, then this will just say your name if you're logged in with your Apple ID and personal team. And your organization identifier is the bit before your bundle identifier. So it's almost like the domain. So you want to make sure that this organization identifier is unique, because if another one of these exists, then you're not going to be able to actually register your application and put it on the App Store. Next thing you want to make sure is that the interface is set to SwiftUI and the language is set to Swift. And then these options here, unless you're using them, you can actually just leave them empty for now. Now we'll cover these in future videos, but as of right now, we're just going to skip that and hit next. So now you want to choose somewhere to save this. So I'm just going to put this on my desktop for now. And then cool, you can now see that it's created a project for me. And I've now got my iOS SwiftUI project ready for me. So just to make things a bit more clearer to see, I'm actually going to enter full screen mode with this. Cool. All right, sweet. So what I want to do is I just want to quickly just discuss the areas that you actually have in Xcode. So if we just actually break this down, so at the top here, we have the toolbar area. This is normally where you would actually choose to run your application, choose different targets, choose separate different simulators. You can actually open and then close the panels on the left and right hand side. And you can also add UI components as well. So we'll cover this in a bit. The next area that we have is the navigator area. So this is the navigator area where you can actually create new files, create folder structures and whatnot. You can also view source files, inspect your UI, networking, debug, all that kind of stuff. And we'll go into a bit more detail on this in future videos when we actually need to. This area here is called the editor area. So this is where you actually write your code that you will be using. So your SwiftUI code will go in here. This area here is called the preview area. So this is where you actually preview your SwiftUI views when you're actually building your app. This area is called the utility area, so where you can actually view the different properties for the UIs that you're working on, and we'll cover this in a bit. And then finally at the bottom here, you have the debug area. So this debug area is where you actually want to print out to the console so you can actually view stuff that is actually happening. And I actually do have an example of this in my previous video that I did where I actually break down SwiftUI, so you can check that out. So now we've broken down each one of the areas. The first thing that I want to discuss is I want to talk about the preview. So the preview is right here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to just close this to create a bit more space. Now I don't have an M1 Mac, so my MacBook isn't rapid, unfortunately. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to hit resume so it can actually build it for me. Okay, sweet. As you can tell, that took a while, man. So what we can do here is we can actually preview our actual SwiftUI views within this bit here. Now, one thing you'll notice is that this is actually reflecting a actual device. But what you can do is you're actually able to change the device that you want to display here. In order to do that, you need to actually go to your toolbar and actually select a device from the list. So let's say if we want to view our app on an iPhone 8, if we actually select that from the drop down here, you'll notice that, well, it should do it automatically, but if it doesn't, hit resume, you'll notice that our preview will now automatically update and reflect the change of the simulator that we've selected. And as you can see, our app has now updated on the right hand side to now match the simulator that we've selected. So within the preview, you can actually hit the run button by tapping the play button here. And what this will do is it will run your SwiftUI view directly in the preview so you can simulate running a specific screen in your app. So let's actually just run this now. And as you can see, the background has gone like a lighter bluish gray color. And also the preview icon here is actually green. So what this lets us know is that everything is okay. If this was red, then what this would mean is that the preview can't build because you have an error within your project somewhere. And also as well, something interesting that I want to cover is that in the bottom corner, you'll actually notice that there's this pin right here. So if we actually tap on this where it says pin preview, you'll notice that it becomes highlighted. But you may be wondering, what does this actually do? Well, what this does is it allows us to actually navigate between different files while still keeping our app preview open. So let's do this now. So if I just go to a different file here, like this one here, you notice that the app preview is still open, so we can actually still work on our main app whilst it's, testing out and working on a screen to making sure that everything is okay. And if I actually disable this and turn this off, you'll notice our preview canvas actually goes away. If we go back to our previews as well, you'll notice that in the bottom right hand corner, you're actually able to zoom in and out. So let's say if you want to inspect the UI to see if something is like pixel perfect, you're actually able to use the magnifying glasses to actually zoom in and actually view your views and also zoom out as well, like so. What you're also able to do is actually choose the number at the bottom here and actually select a percentage so you can actually zoom in like so, and I'll actually zoom in for you, and you can also zoom all the way out, so you can actually control what size you want your device to be on the SwiftUI preview. Another thing that you'll also want to do sometimes is maybe actually view your actual app preview on an actual real device. So if you're someone who has an iPhone connected right now, like I do, so if I go to the list of devices here, you'll notice that I have my phone connected right here. So because my phone is connected, I actually get this second option next to the play button, which will actually run the SwiftUI preview onto my phone. Now that we've just broken down the GUI for the SwiftUI preview, what I actually want to do is talk about how we can actually customize the SwiftUI preview to view our views in different types of like styles and states and whatnot. So if we actually look at the code on the left, you'll notice that we have some code that includes the keyword previews. So this piece of code is what shows the canvas on the right hand side. If we actually comment this out, you'll notice that our SwiftUI preview disappears. So if you ever wonder why you can't see your preview, it's more than likely because you actually don't have this set up properly. So you don't have a preview provider set up properly. So another thing that you actually want to know as well is that you'll actually clock that with our content view, it actually matches the name of our SwiftUI preview as well. We have content view here and we have content view here. And then after it, we have underscore previews, and we use the preview provider protocol, which gives us this implementation to actually render this view onto the preview screen, as you can see. But it's also worth noting as well that actually this is also another view that we can actually customize. Now it's worth noting that any changes that we make to this SwiftUI preview here will actually not be made to the actual main application when you run it on the simulator, because this preview is independent to the actual content view that gets built when you're actually running your app. Well, let's see how we can actually customize the SwiftUI preview by giving this a navigation title. So what I'm going to do is just add a navigation view to this and give it a navigation title. Okay, sweet. So now in our SwiftUI preview, you can see how it's actually rendered a navigation title onto our actual content view like so. But if we was to run this on an actual simulator, like I'm going to do now, you'll notice that we actually won't see this navigation title at all. So let's do that now. So just hit the run button, and then we're just going to run this now. Cool. And as you can see, on our simulator, we don't have the title like we do in our SwiftUI preview. But you may be wondering, okay, so what is the actual purpose of SwiftUI previews just in general? Like I've showed you that you can customize them, but what's an actual good use case? Well, the whole point of these SwiftUI previews is, like it says in the title, it's so you can actually view your app in different states. So let's say, for example, if you want to view your app in light mode, dark mode, or landscape, SwiftUI previews allow you to actually build multiple versions of your screens quickly and allow you to preview them. So let's actually see how we can actually do this. So next to our button to run our app on our device, you'll notice that there's actually like a rotate icon here. So what this actually does is this will actually rotate our SwiftUI preview, and you'll notice that it'll actually modify as well the actual view here. So let's do that now. Cool. And as you can see, it's actually added a new modifier which allows us to preview the orientation in landscape. So if we're someone who was building like an app where it was like a video app or a game or something, we could actually see and make sure that our app actually, looks and loads fine when the device is in landscape. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to just delete this modifier so we can actually just reset it back to what it was before. And next to the orientation icon, you'll actually notice that there's this icon here. What this allows us to do is it actually allows us to actually apply modifiers within our previews using this GUI interface here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you this. So I'm going to select a few devices. So let's say we wanted this device to specifically be an iPhone 12. You'll notice that it's now added a modifier specifying that the preview device should be iPhone 12. And also as well, what I can do is I can also change the color scheme of it from inherited to like dark mode. Okay, cool. So it's got to let this build so it shows the updates. Okay, cool. So as you can see, that's now been updated and it's now showing our device on an iPhone 12 and in dark mode. The benefits of using this icon here is so you don't actually have to type it out manually. You can just easily select, which ones it is that you want. So you can just do that in here. Now, it's also worth noting as well that we actually have another button here which actually allows us to actually duplicate our views within our preview, so we can actually view different variations of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this here, and you'll notice that it's actually created a group and we now have two different navigation views. So what I could actually do is for the first one, I could actually revert this back to what it was now, and I can actually directly edit this. So I'm going to choose light here like so. And then what I could do here, if I wanted to, is I could actually change the device here. So rather than this being an iPhone 12, I'm going to actually increase the size of this to be something like maybe an iPhone, let's say an iPhone 12 Pro Max to make it even bigger. Okay, cool. And as you can see, once that's built, we now have the bigger iPhone 12 Pro Max, and we also have an iPhone 12. So what we're able to do now is actually view our app on different screen sizes and in different like color schemes. on the device. So if the environment was in light and dark mode. Now it's also worth noting as well that we're not just limited to using this button to actually add and group multiple, views within our previews. If we wanted to, we could actually add this manually ourselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy the navigation view and the content view like so, without the modifiers, and just paste it on top. And then what I'm going to do is on the third view that is now generated at the top here, I'm going to go to the modifiers, and for the device, I'm just going to select the smallest device I could find. So something like, let's say an iPhone SE, and then hit resume. And then now you'll notice that we actually have 3 devices that we can actually preview in different sizes. So we can actually make sure that our app looks good on all the possible devices. Now, it's also worth noting just before we move on that when you're working with SwiftUI previews and you're, grouping different views that you want to view on the screen, there's actually a limit to the number that you can actually add into a group. So as of right now, the limit that you can add in is 10. So we've only got 3 at the moment, which is fine. But if we added 11, we'd actually probably get a build error. So when you're actually, wanting to build against different devices, then you want to make sure that you choose a range of devices where they're not all completely the same. So that's something just to keep in mind. Okay, so we've had a look at our previews, but what about when we're actually adding to our actual content view? So when we're actually editing our actual SwiftUI views. So on the left hand side, you'll notice that we have some code in this editor where we write our SwiftUI code. So let's look at how this works, and let's write some. We'll add another text onto the screen below the first one and add it into a VStack. So Xcode makes our lives a lot easier in order to actually add existing views into our new ones. And all we need to do in order to do this is just hold down the command key on our keyboard. And then if we just hover over text, you'll notice that it gets highlighted in blue. Now, if we actually click on this, we're actually able to see a list of actions that we want to perform on this view. Now, in our case, because we want to add this text into a vertical stack, I'm going to choose the option to embed in a VStack like so. And now what this will do is it'll actually add the text into a VStack, so any other elements that we add will be positioned either above or below it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to add in another piece of text underneath hello world. So let's do that now. And I've just put my name here in the string, but you can obviously put whatever you want. But now if you look at our SwiftUI preview, you'll notice that it's actually automatically rendered the second text underneath the first one. So this is the power of SwiftUI, is that like the previews automatically update and reflect. You may be wondering, why do we need to run our previews then if we can just simply see all the text being updated on the right hand side? Well, the problem is that the previews do reflect the UI that we declare. But let's say, for example, if we have a button where if you tap on it, it takes you to another screen. We actually can't test this out without actually running the actual SwiftUI preview. So the best way to think about it is that you want to only run your SwiftUI preview when you want to actually interact with UI elements on the screen. But if you're simply just doing some kind of layout for your UI, then you probably don't need to run the SwiftUI preview. So I've shown you how to modify SwiftUI code, but we're actually able to actually drag and drop elements onto the screen too. So this is done via the library. So let's see how we can use this to add a button onto the screen within our VStack. So like I said before at the start of the video, you'll notice that there's a plus button here at the top, right here. So if we actually select this plus button, what it does is it actually opens up the library. So this is a library where you can actually view your views, modifiers, if you create any snippets, any media, so any images that you have, and any colors as well, you can access it here. So it's pretty cool. So if you actually go in the view section here and actually scroll down, you'll actually notice that there's a lot of UI elements that are included in SwiftUI. And what this actually allows us to do is it allows you to actually build UI, by dragging and dropping views onto the screen. So even if you're someone who isn't really like a, proper developer, you might be a designer, and just want to just have like a graphical user interface to help you build the views to match your designs, where you can easily do this by just simply just using the GUI. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually drag a button into our VStack. So if you just select the button and then just literally just drag it underneath the text, you'll notice that SwiftUI now automatically adds this in for us. So we don't actually need to type any of this out, which is pretty cool. And on our SwiftUI preview, it's automatically updated for us and added the button for us. So we could even take this a step further if we wanted to. And what we could do is we could actually apply modifiers directly onto views as well without actually having to type them out. We can actually just drag them onto views as well. So let's go back to our library and hit the plus button. And rather than being selecting the views, we'll select modifiers. And again, you'll see all the modifiers that you could potentially use. But what we want to do is we actually want to use a foreground modifier so we can actually change the color of our hello world text. So in modifiers, if you just search for foreground, you'll see there's a foreground color. So let's actually get this and actually drag it onto here, like so. I'm just going to hit enter to give it a new line. And now when it builds, you'll notice that our text is now blue. So what we could also do as well is, if we wanted to, is rather than us having to delete this and drag on another modifier, we can actually just directly just edit this here. So you can actually get a list of all the possible colors by simply just typing in dot, and you'll see a list of all the colors here that's possible within the enum. So I'm just going to change this to red, like so. Also as well, if you wanted to see all the other possible options without hitting the dot, what you can actually do is actually hold down Command on your keyboard, and if you actually select, you'll see it being highlighted. If you actually select it and then go to jump to definition, this will actually take you to the actual documentation where you're actually able to view all the possible colors that you're able to use for color. So you can see them all listed here if you want to choose a color. You can actually also Google this as well, but you know, it's just good to get into the habit of knowing where the documentation is in Xcode. So I'm just going to go back to our file. Okay, sweet. So we're not just done there. What we're actually able to do is we're actually able to chain modifiers on top of each other's. So let's actually give this text a background color. So rather than just dragging it in, this time we're going to type it out. So if you just go and hit enter underneath it and you hit the dot, so you'll now get an option to actually add more modifiers on top of your view. So we're going to type out background, and then this time we're going to give the background a color of black, like so. And now you should see that your text has a color of black around it. So one thing to note though, when you're working with modifiers in SwiftUI, is that a modifier is basically the same view with the new style being returned to you. So all that's happening when we're chaining these modifiers is that we're just saying that, hey, I want you to add this padding onto this text view and then give it back to me. So that's why you have this padding that you can see around the button. And then we say, hey, I want you to then apply this text with the padding that it has on it and now add the foreground color red onto the text, which is why you have the padding and the red. And then finally we say, hey, I want you to now add a background color of black onto this view as well, which is why you now have all three styles on top of it. So when you're applying your modifiers in SwiftUI, two things to note is that the modifier will be applied into your view and returned back to you. And also as well, the order in which you place your modifiers is really important, because if I was to now take this out, you'll notice that the padding goes away around the text. And if I was to add this onto the bottom, you'll notice that it now looks different, and it does have padding. The only problem is that we don't have the padding before we add the background color black on it. So the background color black is being drawn around the text and not drawn around the padding that we had before. That's just one thing that you want to keep in mind when working with modifiers in SwiftUI. So another thing that you want to make sure when you're working with views in SwiftUI is that you actually organize them. So in the navigator area, if we just open this up, you'll notice here that we have files like so. But what you're actually able to do is you're actually able to create new files and folders in order for you to organize your SwiftUI views, because you don't want to have one big file with every single SwiftUI view within your app. Now, in order to do this, what you need to do is either A, you can right click and then hit new file, and then this will give you the option to create a new SwiftUI view, hit next, and then give it a name. Or alternatively, what you can do is you can actually go to File, New, and then New File here as well, and actually hit the option to create a new SwiftUI view. There's also a keyboard shortcut that you can use as well. So if you hit Command N on your keyboard, this should also give you the option to create a new SwiftUI view also. So let's just do this now, and I'm just going to call this my dummy view. And as you can see, when I actually choose SwiftUI View, it automatically generates the struct for us with the protocols in the body and also the previews as well. So we don't actually need to write all this out for ourselves manually. It's all done for us. So we can just use this here. And if we wanted to use this dummy view within our other views, we can just reference it by using the struct. Now, one thing that I want to just talk about before I actually close off is the canvas. So we spoke about the, SwiftUI preview here, but sometimes you may actually just want to close the actual SwiftUI canvas. Now, in order to do this, there's two ways of doing this. The first way is you can either select this button here to enable the code review, and what this will do is it will actually hide it for you so you can just focus on typing your code. And if you select it again, it will actually open up the preview for you. Or alternatively, what you can do is you can actually adjust the editor options and actually turn the canvas off like so, or turn it on by selecting it like so as well. And then you can show and hide the preview. If you want to as well, you can actually select this option here, and what this will do is it'll actually allow you to add another SwiftUI view, so you can actually view two SwiftUI view at the same time and actually edit two files at the same time if you wanted to. So I could actually edit my content view and my dummy view at the same time. But if I'm being honest with you, for me this looks a bit like of using, so I don't usually use this option. It's a bit like Inception or something. But that's everything in this video. So I hope you've learned a lot about what Xcode is and how you can use it with SwiftUI. As usual, if you enjoyed it, I'd appreciate if you left feedback in the comment section below, as well as giving the video a thumbs up. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Also as well, if you haven't already, then you can subscribe to the channel by hitting the subscribe button and hitting the notification bell to make sure that you don't miss out on any updates whenever I release a new video. That's everything from me. I'll catch you all in a bit. Deuces.